मॉडर्न इंडियन हिस्ट्री के एक्टिव रिकॉल में आपका स्वागत है। इस एक्टिव रिकॉल में नेक्स्ट 1 to 2 आवर्स हम एक्चुअली पूरा मॉडर्न इंडियन हिस्ट्री को टाइमलाइन अप्रोच से एक्टिवली रिकॉल करेंगे। कहाँ से शुरू करेंगे? तो वील स्टार्ट फ्रॉम द एडवेंट ऑफ पोर्चुगीज़ से लेकर इंडियन इंडिपेंडेंस तक। सो इस पूरे पीरियड को हम एक्टिवली रिकॉल करते हुए एंड ऑल द टॉपिक्स इन वन टाइमलाइन वील डिस्कस। तो सबसे पहले जैसे मैंने बोला 1498 में पोर्चुगीज़ आए। वास्को ड गामा केम टू इंडिया, ही लैंडेड एट कैलीकट, राइट। फर्स्ट अर्माडा ही ब्रॉट विद हिम, स्टार्टेड डूइंग ट्रेड। बट फर्स्ट फैक्ट्री जो पोर्चुगीज़ ने सेटअप की वो कैलीकट में, वो 1500 में थी। उसके बाद पोर्चुगीज़ ने 1510 में गोवा को कैप्चर किया एंड इवेंचुअली लेटर ऑन इट बिकेम इट्स कैपिटल इन इंडिया। नाउ दिस इज़ अ पीरियड 1500 से 1600 जहाँ आपको और यूरोपियन पास नहीं मिलेगी, सिर्फ और सिर्फ आपको पोर्चुगीज़। बट 1600 में इंग्लिश ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी एस्टैब्लिश हुई। द आइडिया वॉज टू डू ट्रेड विद द ईस्ट, पर्टिकुलरली इंडिया, और उनको रॉयल चार्टर मिला क्वीन एलिजाबेथ वन से। 1602 डच ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी भी एस्टैब्लिश हुई एंड बिफोर इंग्लिश कुड कम, इनफैक्ट डच केम बिफोर देम इन इंडिया, ठीक है। तो जो दो पास 1600 की स्टार्टिंग में इंडिया में आई वो थी इंग्लिश एंड डच। इसके बाद जो है डच ने फर्स्ट फैक्ट्री अपनी सेटअप की मसूलीपट्टनम में, जिसको मछलीपट्टनम भी बोला जाता है। एज आई टोल्ड यू, दे वर द फर्स्ट वंस बिफोर ब्रिटिश टू सेटअप देयर फैक्ट्री। 1608 में कैप्टन हॉकिंस केम to India, arrived in India to explore the possibilities of doing trade. 1613 में tentatively जो है ब्रिटिश ने अपनी फर्स्ट फैक्ट्री। नाउ देर आर लॉट ऑफ कन्फ्यूजन सर, मसूलीपट्टनम में हमारा पहला सेटअप होता है, बट इफ़ यू लुक एट द फैक्ट्री, इट इज़ सूरत वेयर द फर्स्ट ब्रिटिश फैक्ट्री वॉज एस्टैब्लिश, जहाँ कंपनी ने अपनी पहली फैक्ट्री एस्टैब्लिश की। 1615 थॉमस रो, हु वॉज द ambassador of the British king to the Mughal court in India, he met whom? Jahangir. So he met Jahangir to depending on the discussions with the Mughal emperor, eventually 1617 में जहांगीर ने फरमान इशू किया to Thomas Roe to set up factories in various parts of the country and to do trade. तो 1639 में, अब ये पीरियड है, इवेंचुअली अ लॉट ऑफ ट्रेड इज हैपनिंग, बट इट इज ऑल्सो पीरियड व्हेन मुगल एम्पायर इज एट इट्स पीक, ठीक है, in India, in most parts of the country. So that is where the European powers are mainly concentrating on doing trade. Francis Day, he founds city of Madras, और वहाँ he establishes Fort Saint George, ठीक है, 1639 में। 1662 में बॉम्बे को किंग चार्ल्स टू को दिया गया था बाय ऑफ इंग्लैंड बाय पोर्चुगीज, बिकॉज Portuguese princess was married in dowry. Bombay was given to King Charles II. So in after few years, this same Bombay was given to the East India Company on annual rent by the king to the company. 1664 में फ्रेंच, अब एक और यूरोपियन पावर जो एंटर हुई, फ्रेंच, दे एस्टैब्लिश फ्रेंच ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी। 1668 में फ्रेंच ने अपनी फर्स्ट फैक्ट्री जो है सूरत में सेटअप की। सूरत वॉज अ हब, बट ग्रेजुअली सूरत से चेंज करके वेस्टर्न कोस्ट से ब्रिटिशर्स इवेंचुअली मूव टू बॉम्बे एज दे हब। 1686 यू सी ब्रिटिश ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी जो है उसको वॉज अटैक्ड एट हुगली बाय औरंगजेब, प्राइमरली बिकॉज दे वर not abiding by the instructions and they were defeated. But Aurangzeb felt that trade is important for the revenues, so 1691 he allowed them the permission to carry on the trade, free trade, basically duty free trade. So 1707 is a turning point jahan the Aurangzeb dies and you see gradually the weakening of Mughals, the later Mughals, and rise of regional states eventually. Okay, rise of regional states, and by this time already Maratha was a big state. So 1730 Balaji Vishwanath, he became the first Peshwa. Peshwa basically, अब इसके बाद से Peshwaship became very important in Maratha politics. Peshwas were the prime ministers who controlled everything, and now from 1713 onwards Balaji Vishwanath became the first Peshwa. फारूक सियार इशूज फरमान, ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट फरमान था जिसको रॉयल फरमान भी बोला जाता है, गोल्डन फरमान बोला जाता है। मैग्ना कार्टा ऑफ ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी बनाई है क्योंकि इसमें ईस्ट इंडिया कंपनी को स्पेशल पावर दी टू इशू दस्तक्स। दस्तक्स आर बेसिकली परमिशंस, एक परमिशंस होती है दस्तक की, लाइक दे स्टार्टेड इशूइंग दस्तक्स टू देमसेल्व्स, दे डू नॉट हैव टू टेक परमिशंस। सो एक to do a trade, the permissions were, that power was given to the East India Company in Bengal. तो 1717 में ही मुर्शीद कुली खान, he became the governor of Bengal. Now very important thing is he became the governor of Bengal, and eventually under him he took control and he declared himself as Nawab of Bengal. So even though he didn't break the ties with Mughals, but more or less Bengal became a pretty independent under him. 1720 Baji Rao became Peshwa and he is also known as fighting Peshwa. इसके बाद 1722 we see Nizamul Mulk. Now Nizamul Mulk, who was a Wazir of Mughal Empire in 1722, he was dragged into the politics of the court. So he was not happy, particularly under Muhammad Shah Rangila. So what he did, after 2 years he went to Deccan and he founded state of Hyderabad and said, I'll be independent here, I don't want to be interfere in the Mughal politics, I'll send annual tributes, everything, but I want to be independent. It's the same year 1722 the same thing happened in Awadh as well, where Sadat Khan took over and he also wanted to remain pseudo independent from Mughal Empire. So what you clearly see is weakening of Mughals. Okay, then 1729 King Martanda Verma became ruler of Kerala, Travancore state, and after this Kerala was pretty much stable with respect to any kind of external or internal threats. 1739 is a turning point, another which was majorly a final nail in the coffin for Mughal Empire in India in terms of a big power, which was Nadir Shah, the king of Persia. He invaded India, particularly Delhi. He plundered Delhi like anything and took with him Kohinoor, which was on the Peacock throne. Peacock throne he also took with him. So 1739 is also when Maratha defeated Portuguese and captured Vasai and Salsette. Vasai is also modern day is known as Vasai. So after 9 years, the Nadir Shah plundered Delhi. Ahmad Shah Abdali invaded India in 1748 and he came back 7 times to plunder Punjab and Delhi again. 1748 Treaty of La Chapelle. This is also treaty between, at the time of Anglo-Carnatic wars between British and French. 1754 another treaty, this is Treaty of Pondicherry between the this is after second Anglo-Carnatic war. 1756 Siraj-ud-Daulah. Now after Murshid Quli Khan, Ali Vardi Khan was the Nawab of Bengal, and after Ali Vardi Khan 1756 Siraj-ud-Daulah became the Nawab of Bengal in 1756. Now he was not an able ruler, didn't have the right temper. So his relationship at that time, even the British, the East India Company was expanding its trade, fortifying its positions, and there was a gradual dispute or a growing dissent between both parties with each other. So now the first time Siraj-ud-Daulah attacked and defeated British in Calcutta in 1757, and he signed a treaty of Alinagar. Alinagar, he gave a name, Alinagar, to what? Calcutta. Okay, Calcutta. So Treaty of Alinagar was signed between Siraj-ud-Daulah and English East India Company in February 1757, but the tensions continued to grow and British started interfering now in the politics. The Jagat Seths of Bengal were also siding now with the East India Company, along with Mir Jafar, the commander-in-chief of the Nawab's army. So there was a battle of Plassey in which British defeated Siraj-ud-Daulah. Now they immediately didn't take control. They primarily continued for trade, and Mir Jafar was made as Nawab, as a puppet king. 1759, the English forces defeated Dutch as well at the Battle of Badar, also known as Battle of Hooghly. Okay, Battle of Hooghly in 1759. So 1759, British defeated Mir Jafar in Battle of Chansara because Mir Jafar also became unhappy with the company's interference and asking for very high tributes, beat Robert Clive as well, who was plundering the coffers of the Bengal province. And Mir Jafar was defeated and was replaced as a Nawab by his son-in-law, Mir Qasim. Okay. So Mir Qasim became the Nawab of Bengal, and 1761, the third battle of Panipat takes place, where Marathas were defeated by Ahmad Shah Abdali. It was a big setback for Marathas to become a power to even control Delhi and Punjab, but they recovered within matter of years, certainly. 1761 is also a period when Wodeyars of Mysore were overthrown by Hyder Ali, who was the commander in Mysore army. 1763 to 1800, you had a Sannyasi rebellion, civil rebellion. Now, Battle of Buxar was fought between the company forces and the combined forces of Mir Qasim, Shuja-ud-Dawla of Awadh, and Shah Alam II, the Mughal emperor. And the combined forces of these three were defeated by the company forces. And next year, the Treaty of Allahabad was signed between both, between the English and the Shah Alam II, as well as Shuja-ud-Dawla separately. And with this treaty, the Mughal emperor Shah Alam II declared that now British had the Diwani rights. That is, revenue collection is now with the British entirely. This is the turning point in the history of India where a trading company which comes has now got the power to do collect revenue. They become the collectors, have all the powers but no responsibility. So Robert Clive introduced this dual system of government where the Diwani rights were with British, but the Suba was to be governed by a Subadar who would look after law and order duties, but then he didn't have really, because there was a resident who would interfere in every single decision. So dual government was there. 1767 to 1769 is also a period when first Anglo-Mysore war takes place in the Deccan. And 1769, this war ended with Treaty of Madras, and this Treaty of Madras said that in future, if any of either power is attacked, the other party will come to help. Now, Regulating Act of 1773 is also passed, which ended the dual government introduced by Robert Clive, and now the British take direct control of Bengal province entirely. So, first Governor General of Bengal was Warren Hastings. He became the first Governor General of Bengal. He abolished system of dual government, and he was the first from 1773 to 1785. So 1775, Treaty of Surat was signed between Raghunath Rao and the British. Now this treaty was led to start off what? First Anglo-Maratha War. And this first Anglo-Maratha War ended with in 1782 with Treaty of Salbai. We'll talk about it. 1780-84, Second Anglo-Mysore War takes place. Second Anglo-Mysore. And during this course of war only 1782, Hyder Ali also died, and the war was continued by his son Tipu Sultan. Now 1781, there is an amending act of 1781 which was passed. Now this act restricted, I again would like to remind, restricted the powers of Supreme Court at Calcutta. Now this Supreme Court was formed in 1773 Regulating Act, but its power were not defined. So it was interfering in a lot of areas. So this amending act of 1781 basically restricted the powers of Supreme. 1782, you see Tipu Sultan, he became the ruler of Mysore, as I told you earlier, after the death of Hyder Ali. Treaty of Salbai, it ended first Anglo-Maratha War in 1782. The second Anglo-Mysore War ended with the Treaty of Mangalore, and this is the last treaty which British signed with another state or province or a princely state at equal levels. After that, it always said that it is paramount. So Pitt's India Act 1784 was brought in as a second major act by the British. Now what it did was it introduced dual government. Now this is different kind of dual government. Court of Directors and Board of Control. Court of Directors had all the commercial functions, to look after all the commercial functions of the company, whereas Board of Control will look after all political functions. Now this Board of Control was created. It included Chancellor of Exchequer, Secretary of State, and members of Privy Council. Okay. 1786 is an amending act, takes place. Now, the Warren Hastings have completed his tenure. He's sent back. Now, to replace him, Lord Cornwallis is decided by the British that he should be brought in as the Governor General of Bengal. But he has put two conditions. He said that I want to be Commander-in-Chief because I'm a military person. And secondly, I need to have some sort of veto in special conditions. To bring him and to accept his demands, this amending act of 1786 was brought in. And eventually he became the Governor General of Bengal from 1786 to 1793. So Third Anglo-Mysore War, 1789 to 1792, was fought, which ended with the Treaty of Seringamapatnam, where a huge war indemnity was put on Mysore. Some parts of Mysore state were taken by various powers, along with the sons of Tipu Sultan were taken into custody by the British. So 1793, now the first in the series of 4 charter acts were introduced by the British. So this gave special rights to East India Company in trade. Okay, Charter Act of 1793. 1793 is also when permanent settlements system was introduced by John Shore, implemented by John Shore, but it was introduced by, it was introduced by Lord Cornwallis. Now 1793 to 1798, John Shore was the Governor General of Bengal and he exercised policy of non-intervention in any of the internal issues. 1798 to 1805 comes Lord Wellesley as a Governor General, and he is an expansionary mindset. He wants to expand, have more political power, and what he does? He implements subsidiary alliance, where the British would take care of the defense of other states, and they have to be paid by those states themselves. But in this way, the states would rely on British now. Fourth Anglo-Mysore War took place in 1798 to 99, ending with the death of Tipu Sultan, and eventually Mysore state accepted subsidiary alliance. So Tipu Sultan was defeated and Krishna Raja III signed subsidiary alliance treaty. 1801, you see the establishment of Sikh state, where Maharaja Ranjit Singh became the ruler. He combined all the confederacies of missiles and created Sikh Empire. 1803, Shah Alam accepted British protection. So Second Anglo-Maratha War started in 1803. 1807 to 13, you see another Governor General, Lord Minto I. He became the Governor General of India, and he signed Treaty of Amritsar with Maharaja Ranjit Singh in 1809, accepting the boundaries between the two, the British as well as the Sikh Empire. Charter Act of 1813, another second in the series of Charter Act, was introduced. Now this is a very, very important Charter Act. It ended the monopoly of the East India Company in trade, except in tea as well as trade with China. Now what it did was it opened Indian market to companies in Britain. It also introduced Christian missionaries in India, and also started its interference in education. Okay. Now 1813 to 23 was a period when Lord Hastings became the Governor General of Bengal. Now do not mistake between Warren Hastings and Lord Hastings are two different personalities. He became the Governor General of Bengal for 10 years. And 1814 to 16, Anglo-Nepal War took place. And this Anglo-Nepal War ended with the Treaty of Sagauli with Nepal, which gave the territories of modern-day Uttarakhand to India and some of the Terai regions. 1815, Atmiya Sabha is started by Raja Ram Mohan Roy. 1817 to 19, you also see Third Anglo-Maratha War, and this Third Anglo-Maratha War ended Peshwaship, ended Maratha Confederacy, and this war is also known as the Pindari War, named after Pindaris who were marauders. So 1817 also is a Paika rebellion in Odisha headed by Bakshi Vidyadhar. 1820, you see Ryotwadi settlement by Alexander Reed and Thomas Munro in the times of Lord Hastings. Ryotwadi, this system, so permanent settlement as we've read, is Zamindari system, but Ryotwadi, where the direct revenue was to be collected from Ryots, which are the cultivators or peasants. Primarily, it was introduced in Madras presidency areas because the zamindari system was not prevalent. Yes, so now we look at timeline period of 1824 to 1826. इस दौरान फर्स्ट एंग्लो बर्मीज वॉर हुई एंड दिस एंग्लो बर्मीज वॉर एंडेड विद द ट्रीटी ऑफ यांडबो विद बर्मा. इसमें कई हिस्सा जो है नॉर्थ ईस्ट रीजन का पर्टिकुलरली थोड़ा वो ब्रिटिश ने एक्वायर किया. एट द सेम टाइम एक सिविल अपराइजिंग हुई 1825 टू 1833 नोन एज पागलपंथी मूवमेंट. 1828 से 1835 लॉर्ड विलियम बेंटिक was the last governor general of Bengal and also the first governor general of India. क्योंकि 1833 एक्ट ने converted governor general of Bengal to governor general of India because now a lot of territories across India was directly under British control. And under Lord William Bentinck, you see a lot of centralization happening. Centralization of powers. 1828, Atmiya Sabha, which was ended, was revamped by Raja Ram Mohan Roy and founded as Brahmo Samaj in 1828. And by the efforts of him, Sati was abolished in 1829. William Bentinck took control of Mysore on the grounds of misgovernance in 1831. Okay, so Mysore now from 1831 to 1881, Mysore was directly under British control when Lord Ripon returned it to the Mysore kings in 1881, again back. Okay, now 1833 Charter Act of 1833 was passed. Now the monopoly which was there with tea and China was also ended for the British. And also led to a lot of centralization of power. Centralization. 1833 you have a Khasi rebellion in Meghalaya under Tirot Singh. 1835 Lord Macaulay. Now this is very important, where Lord Macaulay was brought in to decide between the debate of Anglicists versus Orientalists. Now he himself was an Anglicist and thus he favored Anglicist, that is English education. And with his minute, he said that English education should be introduced in India and favored over the Oriental education. Okay, that was the primary. The Indian press was freed of restrictions by Charles Metcalfe in 1835 and is known as the liberator of Indian press. Okay, so now we will start with the timeline 1836 to 1842. Let's see, Lord Auckland at this time was the Governor General of India, 1836 to 42. And during his time, first Afghan war took place, and very interestingly, he was removed primarily because of the humiliation which British had to suffer in this war. We saw Ferazi disturbance during this period, 1838 to 1857. The turning point in Sikh Empire came when in 1839 Maharaja Ranjit Singh died. And with that, the internal politics of Sikh Empire saw a lot of conflicts. British took advantage of the same, and we'll look at that. The two Anglo-Sikh wars happened from 45 to 49. 1839, Devendranath Tagore founded Tattva Bodhini Sabha, a reform organization. Then 1842 to 44, we had a new Governor General of India, Lord Ellenborough. And Lord Ellenborough wanted to bring back some, you can say, honor to British after the humiliation in First Anglo-Afghan War by, in 1843, Sindh was conquered. At the same time, slavery was also abolished in India. 1844 to 48, Henry Harding became the Governor General of India. And during his period only, 45 to 46, First Anglo-Sikh War happened. And after this war was won by British sent a resident to Lahore. Was not formally occupied Punjab, but resident was sent. 1844, we also see Manav Dharma Sabha established in Gujarat in Surat by Durga Ram Mehta ji, Dadoba Panduram, and others. So 1846, the First Anglo-Sikh War ends with the Treaty of Lahore, and Bhairoval was signed between British and Sikhs, where, as I told you, the resident was sent to Lahore. 1848 to 1856, Lord Dalhousie became the Governor General of India. Now we know a lot of things happened. He started doctrine of lapse, annexation of so many states happened. And to begin with, it was the annexation of Punjab after the Second Anglo-Sikh War. 1848 we also see Students' Literary and Scientific Society formed to develop an interest in literary and scientific knowledge. Paramhans Mandali was founded by Dadoba Pandurang Durgaram Mehtaji and his friends in Maharashtra in 1849. Very importantly, we've seen for women education, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, started Bethune School in Calcutta in 1849. 1851, Nauroji Furdonji, Dadabai Nauroji and S.S. Bengali, they started an organization for Parsis, reform organization. This is Rehnumai Maza Dayasan Sabha, religious reform organization. 1852 to 53, we see Second Anglo-Burmese War. Now, fourth in the line of the Charter Act, the final one is the Charter Act of 1853. Under this Charter Act, earlier every Charter Act, the charter was extended for 20 years, the East India Company rule, but this time no timeline was given. That meant that the East India Company rule was nearing its end. 1854, a proper detailed document on the way forward for English education in India through Wood's Educational Dispatch was published. With this, the new universities were established, Calcutta, Bombay, Calcutta, Bombay and Madras, and also a lot of initiatives in developing education through this, especially English education. 1855, Santhal revolt happens in Jharkhand under Sidhu Manjhi and Kanhu. 1856, Awadh was annexed on the pretext of misgovernance. 1856, Hindu Widows Remarriage Act after the efforts of Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar. Now this Awadh was annexed on pretext of misgovernance. Wajid Ali Shah, who was the Nawab of Awadh at that time, he was removed, he was sent to Calcutta, and Dalhousie said that it was being misgoverned and annexed it. We saw the revolt of 1857. There are many reasons, we've discussed it, you can read it also, and V.D. Savarkar wrote the same revolt as India's first war of independence, which later on this written document by V.D. Savarkar really inspired future revolutionaries. 1858, we see in October of 1858, Government of India Act 1858, and in month of November, Queen's Proclamation. Now, Queen's Proclamation was about that the government won't interfere in the religious affairs, the company role has come to an end, and directly taking over the rule, the British government directly took over the direct control of Government of India. 1861, we further see Indian Council Acts being passed now, gradually, very slowly, you see some Indian representation in the legislature. It's still nominated, non-official, but gradual. 1861, Indian Civil Service Act of 1861. The civil services is open to Indians now. 1864 to 69, John Lawrence is the Governor General of India. Now, 1864, there is a Duar War with Bhutan, and this ends in 1865 with Treaty of Sinchula. 1866, East India Association was established by Dadabhai Nauroji in London. These were early political organizations and one of only few which was in London. 1867, Prarthana Samaj was founded by Dr. Atmaram Pandurang in 1867 in Mumbai. Okay. M.G. Ranade, R.G. Bhandarkar, N.G. Chandrabhakar were prominent members of the Samaj. Now, these are other political organizations. So, initial activity, what you see 1861 onwards, the rise of political activity through these organizations. But at the same time, the revivalist and the reform movements at certain levels were also taking place. So, one of the revivalist movements were the Deobandi movement, which began in 1867 around the Darul Uloom Madrasa in Deoband, Uttar Pradesh. And this was founded by Muhammad Qasim Nanotavi, Rashid Ahmad Gangohi. 1870, the Female Infanticide Prevention Act was passed, banning female infanticide and making it criminal offense. 1870, you also see Indian Reform Association formed by Keshav Chandra Sen. Another political organization you see is coming up in 1870 is Pune Sarvajanik Sabha by M.G. Ranade, G.V. Joshi and S.H. Chaplunkar. 1872 is a period when Native Marriage Act was passed, provided for secular marriage without religious rights. 1875, Arya Samaj was founded in Bombay by Swami Dayanand Saraswati to reform Hinduism. It also had some of the revivalist tendency, but primarily a reform organization. 1875, the Theosophical Society was founded in New York. In November 1875 by H.P. Blavatsky, She was a Russian lady and an American known as Olcott, H.S. Olcott. Now they came to India in 1879. They established their society's headquarters at Adyar near Madras. Later on, Annie Besant became an ardent follower of the Theosophical Society. Okay, 1876 you see Second Afghan War. Now this Second Afghan War is when you see the British winning. 1876 Indian Association, another political organization established by Surendranath Banerjee and Anand Mohan Bose. So 1877 Delhi Darbar of Queen Victoria. Now she didn't come, but then Queen Victoria was proclaimed in this Delhi Darbar as Empress of India. 1879 Treaty of Gandamak with Afghanistan was signed after the Second Anglo-Afghan War. Now, one of the earliest revolutionary activities you see is 1879 when Vasudeva Balwant Phadke, who was a clerk in the commissariat department, what he did, he gathered the band of Ramoshi peasants and he started armed uprising in Maharashtra. 1881 Lord Ripon, he restored the kingdom to Mysore ruler. Okay. And as I told you, 1831 to 1881, it was directly under British, but in 1881, Lord Ripon, he restored it to Vodeyars of Mysore, their kingdom. Now, a commission on education was set up in 1882 under by Lord Ripon, Hunter Commission. And one of the major steps which were taken were the privatization in education. 1884 to 1888, Lord Dufferin is the viceroy, and during his period, you see the Indian National Congress came up. 1884, Madras Mahajan Sabha was also set up by M. V. Raghav Acharya. 1885, Bombay Presidency Associations, one of the last political organizations before the Congress, which was set up in Bombay by Firoz Shah Mehta, K.T. Telang, and Badruddin Tyabji. So first, A.O. Hume brought together these political organizations and the leaders under one umbrella, and they formed Indian National Congress. And W.C. Banerjee was the first president of Indian National Congress. The 1885 Third Anglo-Burmese War took place. Third Anglo-Burmese War. 1892, very important, Indian Council Act. Now, as I said, gradually the representation for Indians were growing. So non-official members as Indians further grew in the legislature, and some additional powers were given on discussing the budget. 1893, Gandhiji on a case in Durban, Natal in South Africa, he reached there, and eventually after a year he was engrossed in the plight of Indians in South Africa. 1897, brothers Damodar and Balakrishna Hari Chapekar brothers. Now another one of the very important revolutionary activity which took place at the last end of 19th century. Chapekar brothers assassinated two British officials, W.C. Rand and Lieutenant Ayerst. These were plague commissioners and assistant commissioner. Lord Curzon, in May 1899, he became the viceroy, and 1899 to 1900 we also see Munda revolt in Jharkhand, headed by Birsa Munda. 1902, under the rule of Curzon, Indian Universities Commission, which is also known as Rayleigh Commission, set up. Now this report eventually 1904, which I'll discuss later on, the Indian Universities Act was passed. Now this privatization was it was found that privatization has been harmful in decreasing the level of education. 1902, you see a revolutionary organization, Anushilan Samiti, which was a secret revolutionary organization. It was established in Calcutta in 1902. It was associated with freedom fighters such as Aurobindo Ghosh, Bipin Chandra Pal, Brahma Bandhap Upadhyay, and Jatindranath Banerjee. 1902, due to the contribution in the Boer War, especially the ambulance corps which Gandhiji helped set up, he was bestowed with the title Kaisar-e-Hind by British. 1903, Gandhiji in South Africa started a weekly journal, Indian Opinion. 1904, British invaded Tibet, also known as Young Husbands invasion. In 1904, Mahatma Gandhi founded Phoenix Settlement in Durban for community living. So 1904 is also a time when V.D. Savarkar, he found Vinayak Damodar Savarkar, V. Savarkar, he founded Abhinav Bharat Society, or in English Young India Society, as a secret organization by V.D. Savarkar and his brother Ganesh. Now it was on the lines of Young Italy by Mazzini. He was really inspired by Mazzini, right? 1905 partition of Bengal took place, and suddenly you see the change of politics from moderates to extremists, and the passing of 4 resolutions and starting of Swadeshi movement. At the same time, in 1905, Shyamji Krishna Verma, he founded Indian Home Rule Society in London along with India House, where Indians could come and stay to study, and also acted as their headquarters for revolutionary activities. And he also started a journal, The Indian Sociologist, in London. 1905, Madam Bikaji Kama, SR Rana, and Muncher Shah Burjorji Godrej established the Paris Indian Society. Another revolutionary activities in Paris. 1905, as I've already told you, after partition of Bengal, Swadeshi movement starts. And in 1905 session, Banaras session, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, the president of Congress, condemned partition and reactionary regime of Curzon. The session was supported, and the Swadeshi and boycott movement of Bengal started. Well, this is also a period where you see Lord Minto II, he came as now the viceroy, right? Lord Minto II. Now, 1906, Pulin Bihari Das started Anushilan Samiti in Dhaka also. So, revolutionary activities continued. Yugantar Patrika was launched in March 1906 by Barendra Kumar Ghosh, Abhinash Bhattacharya, and Bhupendranath Dutt. Muslim League was established and found under leadership of Aga Khan. Lord Minto II told Muslims to come together for their own demands and be loyal to the British. And eventually, All India Muslim League was formed in 1906. 1906 session of Indian National Congress, Dadabhai Nauroji was the president, and 4 resolutions were passed on Swadeshi, boycott of foreign goods, national education, and Swaraj. But after 2 years, the session was dominated by Congress session in 1907 by moderates. What they did was they expelled extremists, and they made their entire objective of national movement as moderate or constitutionary, following constitutionary mechanism only. So it led to Surat split. 1908, revolutionary act took place. Khudiram Bose and Prafulla Chakki, they threw a bomb at a carriage which they believed was occupied by Kingsford, the unpopular judge, but it was who was someone else. So Prafulla Chakki, he killed himself, and Khudiram Bose at the age of 15 was hanged. 1908, Sri Behramji Malabari and his friend Devan Dayaram Gidumal, they established Seva Sadan Society in 1908 in Mumbai to offer shelter to impoverished and oppressed women from all communities. So 1909, you see Indian Council Act of 1909. Now, what is the unique about this? Is separate electorates are introduced, right, for Muslims. 1909 also, Madan Lal Dhingra is assassinated. Madan Lal Dhingra assassinates Sir Curzon Willie in London, after which he is hanged at the age of 21-22. And he was also living in India House in London. 1909, Anant Lakshman Kanhere, a 17-year-old boy from Maharashtra, shot and killed A.M.T. Jackson, the district magistrate of Nashik. Now, he killed it with Browning pistol, which was sent by Savarkar into India so that a revolutionary movement could be started. And later on, Savarkar was arrested in the same case, Nashik conspiracy case, under which he got 2 life sentences of Kala Pani. 1909, G.D. Kumar, he opened a hostel in Vancouver called Swadesh Sevak Home on the lines of India House in London. So, given the restriction in London, G.D. Kumar, he opened the similar nature house in Vancouver known as Swadesh Sevak Home. In 1911, Delhi Darbar of King George V happened, where George V attended it, and he was, made as a king of Britain, United Kingdom. 1911, Partition of Bengal, which happened in 1905, was revoked. 1912, an unsuccessful attempt was made under leadership of Rash Behari Bose and Sachin Sanyal. Now, this is known as Delhi conspiracy case, where Rash Behari Bose and Sachindranath Sanyal, they tried to blow up or kill Viceroy Lord Hardinge, but it was an unsuccessful attempt. 1913, Indian revolutionaries, which were living in United States of America and Canada, they formed a party known as Gadar Party, also known as Rebellion Party. 1914 to 18 was the period of First World War. And 1914, another incident which took place was Kamagata Maru incident. Now, under this incident, Indians boarded a ship from Singapore to Vancouver, but they were not allowed to deboard, and for 2 months the ship was in sea and again sent back to India at Calcutta, where the occupants were told to leave for Punjab in Punjab Mail. When the many Punjabis refused, they were shot at and killed. 1915, Madan Mohan Malviya, he founded All India Hindu Mahasabha in 1915 as an umbrella organization of regional Hindu Sabhas. 1916, you see a Lucknow Pact between Muslim League and Congress. Also, this is a period where extremists are uh, again joined Congress or invited, and the split which took place now 1916, extremists came back to Congress again. 1916 to 18 is the major time when Indian Home Rule League is active under two leaders, one under Bal Gangadhar Tilak and the second under Annie Besant. Okay. 1970, there's a Montego Declaration. Montego, who is the Secretary of State, he declares that it is that responsible government is the ultimate objective of British, right? Responsible government. So Mahatma Gandhi, he came back in 1915 to India, and his first movement in which he led was Champaran Satyagraha in 1917, where Teen Kathia system for indigo cultivator was still being used. And in 1917, a Sadler Commission, which is known as Calcutta University Commission, was set up to look into the educational system, particularly the university education system in India. Ahmedabad mill strike was another where Gandhiji first took fast unto death, where he was able to increase the wages of Ahmedabad mill workers. In 1918, another Kheda Satyagraha. It was where Gandhiji also met Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, and they helped Kheda farmers, peasants, to eventually help decrease the increased tax demand. 1919 is when Government of India Act of 1919 is passed based on the Montfort reforms. So as the responsible government, only thing which was provided was in provinces. What was given? Provinces, it was diarchy, whereas diarchy means that transferred and reserved subjects. So some sort of a responsible government, but it was not a responsible government. 1919, you have Rowlatt Act passed after the World War ends, which again arrests, under which arbitrary arrests could be taken without trial, and a protest against same arise in early April across India, and because of this protest there is a tense situation in Punjab, and eventually on 13th April 1919, Jallianwala Bagh massacre takes place in Amritsar. Well, in 1920, you see, so based on that, the simmering situation in Punjab and the Khilafat movement, 1920-22, Gandhiji led Khilafat and non-cooperation movement. 1920, M.N. Roy, he participated in the Communist International, and he set up Communist Party of India outside India in Tashkent. But it didn't last long, so officially it was started in 1925. 1920, just before the starting of Khilafat movement, day before, Lokmanya Tilak, he passed away. So it was a passing of baton from Lokmanya Tilak as a mass leader to Mahatma Gandhi. So eventually this non-cooperation movement was ended through Chauri Chaura incident, which happened in a village called Chauri Chaura in February of 1922, when the villagers, they basically put the entire police station on fire, where policemen died, and Gandhiji called it a violent movement and people are not ready for it, and hence he eventually stopped non-cooperation movement. 1922 to 24, Rampa Rebellion, Alluri Sitaram Raju under that, it's a tribal movement. 1923, Swaraj Party was formed, where C.R. Das was the president and Motilal Nehru was the secretary, and within Congress they wanted to fight. There were those factions who believed as pro-changers, who said that let's not fight through constructive work after the non-cooperation movement, but through participating in the elections. 1924, Belgaum session happened, where it was only time when Gandhiji presided over the session, and this is when Gandhiji gave approval for Swaraj Party to fight elections, whereas Swaraj Party was told to obey all other objectives of no changers. 1924, revolutionaries of northern India reorganized under the leadership of Sachindranath Sanyal, Jogesh Chatterjee and Ramprasad Bismil at Kanpur, and founded HRA to organized armed revolution. So what they did was they conducted Kakori train robbery. Kakori train robbery was conducted by HRA. 1925, officially in India, the Communist Party of India was formed in Kanpur. Now Bhagat Singh and his compatriots, revolutionary companions, they found Naujawan Bharat Sabha in March of 1926 in Lahore, and Simon Commission was announced to come and look into the constitutional development and need for it in India, and the problem with this commission was it was an all-white committee, and hence the protest started against it. So another committee, Butler Committee, was appointed to investigate and clarify the relationship between paramount power of the British Raj in India and rulers of princely states. So 1927, on 17 December, Bhagat Singh, Azad and Rajguru mistakenly targeted and killed Additional Superintendent of Police John Saunders, while their actual aim was Superintendent of Police James Scott. 1927, at the age of 13, Rani Ganden Liu, along with her cousin Haipu Jadonang, joined Heraka movement. Now this movement aimed to revive Naga tribal religion and establish self-rule of the Nagas, ending British rule. In 1928, all the major young revolutionaries, which I told, the ones met at Firozshah Kotla ground under the leadership of Chandrasekhar Azad. Now, one of the things which they did was they accepted socialism as their ultimate official goal, and they changed the name of HRA to HSRA, where socialist word was added. Now, Motilal Nehru published Nehru Report. What is this? The thing is, an all-party conference took place to discuss on that how combined points could be given to the government of India so that changes can be made in subsequent, constitutional development. So Nehru Report gave the recommendations for the all-party conference which happened. Of course, there were certain points which All India Muslim League didn't agree with, and it could not be reflected in the Nehru Report. So unhappy with this, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, he came out with his 14 points, 1929. He said that all future discussions which will take place with the government or the Congress will be based on these 14 points. 1929, Purna Swaraj was adopted in Lahore session of Congress. That now, Nehru Report whereas talked about dominion status, and the timeline which was given for us for 1 year to government to accept, which they didn't. Eventually, 1929, under the leadership of Jawaharlal Nehru, Purna Swaraj resolution was adopted in Lahore session of Congress, and 1930, 26 January was celebrated by Congress as the first Independence Day. Child Marriage Restraint Act was enacted, setting the minimum age of marriage for girls and boys at 16 and 18, respectively, also known as Sarda Act. So Sarda Act was also passed. 1929, Bhagat Singh, Bhutto Keshwara Dutt, they threw a bomb in Central Legislative Assembly on 8th April 1929. They were basically protested against the passage of Public Safety Bill and Trade Dispute Bill. The thing is that they threw the bombs on empty benches just to make the deaf hear. But eventually they were arrested, and then they were tried under the Lahore conspiracy case, for which Rajguru, Bhagat Singh and Sukhdev were given death sentence. 1930 to 32, during this period, Yugantar and Anushilan groups underwent reorganization, and a new group called the Chittagong Revolt Group, led by Surya Sen, it emerged. 1930, Gandhiji said that we will start with another movement, civil disobedience movement, if government does not adhere to what we are demanding. Government wanted that Gandhiji take part in, or Congress take part in, round table conferences. Gandhiji said, okay, we will take, but these are 11 demands which we want. And Lord Irwin, he rejected those demands, and Gandhiji started with civil disobedience movement through Dandi March, where he broke the salt law. 1930 to 33, we saw civil disobedience movement, where from 1930 to 31, you saw the first active phase, then it was suspended in between so that Congress could participate in the second roundtable conference, and from 32 and 33, we saw the second phase. Now in 31, when it was suspended, why it was suspended was that Irwin invited Gandhiji to have a discussion, and eventually there was a pact that Gandhiji or Congress will join the second roundtable conference, and Irwin would agree to certain things. So this was known as Gandhi-Irwin Pact, also known as Delhi Pact. So Congress participated in second roundtable conference after this. Karachi session passed the resolution of fundamental rights, which happened under the presidency of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. Fundamental Rights and National Economic Program, also known as Karachi Resolution. The resolution was drafted by Jawaharlal Nehru and revised by Gandhi. 1932, Congress participated in second roundtable conference as per the terms of Delhi Pact, right? And it was a huge setback for Congress, because at the end of this session, the Ramsay MacDonald, who was the Prime Minister of UK, he announced Communal Award. Now, Communal Award was the biggest problem, because at that time, Gandhiji said that it will divide the Hindu society. Under this, depressed classes were also now announced separate electorates. So Gandhiji thought that no, we won't allow separate electorates. Let's come to discussion. So he had a discussion and eventually an agreement with Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, where he agreed to joint electorates at a higher level within the general quota, right? Joint electorates for depressed classes. This was Pune Pact. 1932, Harijan Sevak Sangh All India Anti-Touchability League was established on 30th September by Mahatma Gandhi. And eventually from here onwards, for next few years, Gandhiji worked in eradication untouchability. 1934, Acharya Narendra Dev, J.P. Narayan, Ram Manohar Lohia and others, they formed Congress Socialist Party within the Congress. So based on Simon Commission report, Lothian Committee report, Communal Award, 3 roundtable conferences, white paper, the Government of India Act 1935 was passed in 1935, where diarchy was introduced in the center and complete state autonomy was introduced in the provinces. 1936 Lucknow session Congress took place. All India Kisan Sabha was established. Swami Sahajananda Saraswati was elected as its first president. 1936 Faizpur session, it was the first Congress session in rural area. 1937 provincial election, where it was took place, where Congress performed really well. And that is where Congress felt that, see, they are invincible, they even did well in the Muslim areas. And Muslim League couldn't do too well. Even Muslim League offered to form a coalition government with Congress in United Provinces. It was rejected by Congress. 1938, the 51st session of Congress was held at Haripura village in Surat district. This was presided by Subhash Chandra Bose. Now 1939, Subhash Chandra Bose, he formed a forward bloc as a new party within Congress after resigning as president of Congress. Eventually this forward bloc separated from Congress. So 1939 to 1945, Second World War took place. So Indians were not happy and were against World War II. So to appease Indians and to take their support, Lord Linlithgow at that time came out with the August offer. He said that we will provide dominion status after and set up a constituent assembly constituting mainly Indians. The offer was rejected. On the other hand, All India Muslim League passed a Pakistan resolution that we want a separate country known as Pakistan. 1941, in response to August offer, individual satyagraha was done by Vinoba Bhave and Jawaharlal Nehru. Now another effort was made by the British government. So Cripps mission was sent, and they also proposed some of the important, again, dominion status and constituent assembly, but there were provisions which would have challenged the integrity of the country, where the unity of the country. It was rejected, and in response, immediate response to it, Quit India movement was started by Congress, and also known as Agast Kranti. In 1942, Singapore, Mohan Singh, he formed. Now Mohan Singh, the Indian soldiers who were fighting on behalf of British, they lost from Japan. Now the surrendered soldiers, they came together and asked the Japanese, they be allowed to form Azad Hind Fauj, which will fight the British. So Mohan Singh formed Indian National Army or Azad Hind Fauj in February of 1942. Now Subhash Chandra Bose, he was brought to Singapore, and he revived this Azad Hind Fauj and he was brought to Singapore by German and Japanese submarines and took charge of Indian National Army. 1944, there were attempts made to have some sort of pact so the partition of the country could not be done, or there should be consensus among Congress and Muslim League. So one of the formulas was Rajaji formula, and another effort was made by Desai and Liaquat, Bhulabhai Desai and Liaquat Ali Khan of Muslim League, and Bhulabhai Desai of Congress. 1945, Lord Wavell came out with a plan and he invited parties to Shimla, which was rejected by the parties. 1945 to 46, the Indian National Army, who had surrendered after Japanese lost, their trial started in Red Fort. Also 1945, Clement Attlee became the UK Prime Minister after Labour Party won. So now the objective of the Congress, or the objective of the government, the Labour government, was to pass on to the, set up a responsible government in India. But the thing was, the biggest issue was there was no consensus on how. Muslim League wanted separate Pakistan. Congress wanted united India. So 1946, another elections took place. Muslim League won in Muslim dominated areas, showing that it had a support of Muslims. 1946 cabinet mission plan came up. 3 members of UK cabinet were sent, and the cabinet mission plan happened. 1946, also election to Constituent Assembly took place after a cabinet mission plan, and Constituent Assembly was formed. Also, after failure of cabinet mission, some aspects of cabinet mission was not accepted. Jinnah called for direct action day on 16th August of 1946, when he said enough is enough. I want Pakistan. All my community members go and do riot and all to press the League's demand for Pakistan. And there was extraordinary riots which took place across Bengal, particularly in Calcutta. 1946, an interim government was formed. So finally, 1947, to make the partition clear, so on February 20, 1947, British Prime Minister Clement Attlee announced that British would withdraw from India by 30th June 1948. And what they did was they appointed Lord Mountbatten as Viceroy to ensure smooth transfer of power. Now, Mountbatten, on 3rd June, he announced that Mountbatten Plan. Mountbatten Plan was to divide India but retain maximum unity and divide India into two dominions of India and Pakistan. This was done by making concessions to both the Congress and Muslim League. And a boundary commission was announced under Radcliffe, and eventually boundary commission under Radcliffe. And on, just see the irony, on 15th August India became independent. The report of the boundary commission only came on 17th August 1947. So Indian Independence Act of 1947 was passed by Parliament of United Kingdom based on Mountbatten Plan and received royal assent on 18 July 1947. With this way, we started with 1498 when Vasco da Gama came to India in Calicut to India's independence in 1947. This was active recall through timeline method. Hope it was helpful. For more such videos, stay tuned to upscprep.com. Thank you.